I thought I knew what France would be like. I mean, I'd seen the movies. I pictured myself on morning croissant runs, living in a charming Parisian apartment with a tiny wrought iron balcony, and having deep philosophical chats in smoky cafes. In my head, I was effortlessly chic, totally fluent in French and navigated those cobblestone streets like I was born there. It's a powerful dream, isn't it? It's the one so many of us have. A fantasy pieced together from romantic movies and perfectly curated Instagram feeds. A life painted in shades of buttery pastries, vintage wine, and artistic inspiration. And for a while, I lived in that dream. I planned, I saved, I packed my bags, all with this perfect movie montage playing on a loop in my mind. I was ready for my beautiful, simple French life. But here's what the movies don't show you. The unfiltered, often maddening, but ultimately incredible reality of actually building a life here. They don't show you the mountain of paperwork that feels personally designed to crush your soul. They don't show you that dead-eyed stare you get from the bank teller when you're just trying to open an account. And they definitely don't prepare you for the moment it hits you. Having a great vacation in Paris is not the same as living in Paris. My journey from that cinematic dream to the messy, complicated, and far more rewarding reality was a steep learning curve. I had to shred my expectations one by one and replace them with something real. So, if you're dreaming that same dream, or you're about to take the leap yourself, stick around. This is the real story of what it's like to move to France. The challenges, the culture shock, and all the unexpected joys the movies leave out. Let's be honest, my idea of France was a complete work of fiction. I was going to be the main character in my own version of Amélie, finding quirky magic around every corner. My apartment would be effortlessly cool with a view of the rooftops, like something out of a Goddard film. My social life? A scene from Midnight in Paris, just debating art and philosophy with witty intellectuals over glasses of red wine. I spent years building this fantasy. I'd scroll through photos of sun-drenched lavender fields in Provence and picture myself there, with a basket of fresh produce from the market. I'd watch cooking shows and imagine myself mastering a perfect coq au vin in some rustic farmhouse kitchen. The language? I figured it would just come to me, you know, by osmosis. I thought my tongue would magically untangle itself after a few polite bonjours and mercis. I did download a language app, learned to say, "The cat is under the table," and figured, hey, the rest will fall into place once I'm there. And my financial plan? Let's just say it was optimistic. I'd read a few articles and decided life would be charmingly affordable. I envisioned a life of simple pleasures. A daily baguette for €1, a cheap but delicious bottle of wine, and rent that was a fraction of what I was paying back home. The French, I assumed, had perfected the art of living well on less. They had that amazing work-life balance with their 35-hour work weeks and month-long holidays in August. And the bureaucracy? I'd heard the whispers, sure. People would say, oh, the French bureaucracy is a nightmare. But with this affectionate little chuckle, as if it were a quirky national sport. How bad could it really be? A few forms, a couple of lines, just a charmingly inefficient system that was all part of the authentic experience. It was just another scene in my movie, the part where the hero overcomes a minor comical obstacle. Even my vision for fitting in was romanticized. I figured the French, maybe a little reserved at first, would be won over by my charming attempts to speak their language. I'd have my local cheese shop, my bakery, my little cafe, where the owner would greet me by name. I wouldn't be an expat, an outsider. I would just blend in. This was the dream I packed in my suitcase. It was heavy, glossy, and totally unprepared for the collision with reality. I wasn't just moving to a new country, I was moving into a fantasy I'd built myself. And the first thing to shatter that fantasy wasn't a cultural blunder. It was one word: visa. The dream dies, or at least goes into a coma the second you visit the official French visa website. The romantic music in your head screeches to a halt. The soft focus lens shatters, replaced by the harsh fluorescent glare of government regulations. This wasn't a charming quirk. This was an administrative Mount Everest, and I was at the bottom in flip-flops. If you are not an EU citizen, your French dream starts not on a Parisian street, but on a government portal like France Visas. You learn fast that you can't just show up. If you plan to stay more than 90 days, you need a long-stay visa, a visa de long séjour. This isn't a suggestion, it's a non-negotiable rule. My first mistake was underestimating the sheer amount of paperwork. It's not just a form and a photo. It's a deep dive into your entire existence. I needed proof of identity, obviously, but I also needed proof of accommodation in France before I was even approved to go. Think about that for a second. You have to find a place to live in a country you aren't yet allowed to live in. It's a classic chicken and egg problem. Do you sign a rental contract you might never be able to use? Ask a friend for a formal letter saying you'll live with them and just pray the consulate accepts it? Then came the money. The French government, reasonably, wants to know you won't be broke. You'll likely need to prove you have funds equivalent to the French minimum wage, which is around $1,800 a month gross for the duration of your stay. This means months of bank statements, pay stubs, and letters from your employer. It felt like a full financial audit. The casual dream of living on wine and cheese was suddenly replaced by the cold reality of Excel spreadsheets. And the list just kept going. I needed proof of health insurance for my entire stay, a letter explaining why I wanted to move, a flight itinerary, photos with specifications so precise they must have been designed by a military engineer. One wrong date, one missing signature, and the whole application could be rejected. The real panic set in when I discovered the unwritten rules and recent changes. I learned that for many residence permits, you now need to prove you can speak French, often at an A2 or B1 level. My Duolingo streak suddenly felt pathetic. This wasn't just about ordering coffee anymore. My right to be in the country depended on my ability to conjugate irregular verbs. Even the idea of working remotely on a tourist visa is a complete fantasy. It's strictly forbidden. If you want to be a digital nomad, you need a specific visa for that, which has its own maze of requirements, like getting a business plan approved by the French government. The application process itself is a masterclass in patience. You fill everything out online, upload your life story, and then you wait. You wait for an appointment at the consulate, which can take weeks or months. You go to the appointment, hand over your precious documents, pay the fee, around 99 for the visa itself, and then you wait again. Those weeks are a special kind of torture. You reread your application 100 times, convinced you missed something. Getting that visa sticker in your passport is a feeling of pure, unfiltered relief. You feel like you've conquered the beast. But that, I soon learned, was just another illusion. The visa isn't the finish line. It's the ticket to the starting line. Once you land in France, a whole new chapter of bureaucracy begins. You have to validate your visa with the French Office for Immigration and Integration, or OFII. This involves paying another tax, and, for many, attending a medical checkup and signing a Republican integration contract. That contract often comes with mandatory civic education classes and, if your language skills aren't good enough, required French lessons. This whole process was my real welcome to France. It was a humbling lesson that this country runs on its own logic. It dismantled my movie fantasy and replaced it with a deep respect for the system's complexity. I had survived my baptism by bureaucracy, but now I had to figure out how to actually live. With the visa sorted, I thought, okay, now the dream starts. Time to unpack, find my local bakery, and sip wine like a carefree local. But no, the administrative gauntlet just splinters into a dozen new challenges. The next two were housing and banking. A two-headed monster guarding the entrance to a normal life. Finding a place to live in France, especially in Paris, is less of a house hunt and more like applying to the CIA. The rental market is famously protective of tenants, which is great once you're in, but it makes landlords incredibly picky. This pickiness is all about one thing, the dossier. Your dossier is your rental application on steroids. It's a folder with every important document about you. You need your ID and visa. You need proof of employment, and landlords want to see a permanent work contract, a CDI. If you're a freelancer, you're already at a disadvantage. Then comes the money part, and this is the real kicker. The unwritten rule across France is that your net monthly income must be at least 3 times the rent. So for a one-bedroom apartment in Paris, which can easily cost $500 a month or more, you need to prove you're making at least $4,500. And you need to prove it with your last 3 French pay slips. If you just arrived, well, you see the problem. But the most uniquely French hurdle is the garant, or guarantor. This is a person, almost always required to be in France, who co-signs your lease and promises to pay your rent if you can't. For a new expat with no family in the country, this is almost impossible. It's a catch-22 that feels deeply unfair. You're ready and able to pay, but you can't get a foot in the door without a French safety net you haven't had time to build. The hunt itself is a war zone. You find a listing online, and if you're lucky, you get invited to a group viewing. You show up with your perfect dossier, only to find 20 other hopefuls clutching identical folders, all trying to charm the landlord in a 15-minute frenzy. It's stressful and a long way from the charming apartment search I'd imagined. Let's say you conquer that and find a flat. Your next quest: open a bank account. You can't do anything. Pay rent, set up utilities, get a phone plan, without a French bank account and its magic key, the RIB, Relevé d'identité bancaire. This little piece of paper with your account details is the bedrock of your entire financial life here. But to open a bank account, you need proof of address like a utility bill. And to get a utility bill, you need a bank account. It's the ultimate paradox. The key is finding a bank that will accept temporary proof of address, but this takes a lot of persistence. You can't just walk up to a teller, you have to make an appointment with an advisor. Even when you succeed, it takes another week or two for your debit card and checkbook, yes, checks are still a thing here, to arrive in the mail. For the first few weeks, you're living in a cash-only limbo. Beyond these headaches, there was the daily cultural struggle. I learned fast that politeness in France is a ritual. You have to say bonjour monsieur or bonjour madame every time you walk into a shop. Forgetting this isn't just rude, it basically guarantees you'll be ignored. Same goes for au revoir when you leave. They aren't just pleasantries, they're the price of admission. Meal times are sacred. Lunch isn't a sandwich at your desk, it's a proper, hour-long break. If you're invited to dinner, never arrive on time. Being about 15 minutes late is polite. And you don't talk about money, but you're expected to have strong opinions on politics, food, and art. These are the invisible rules. No one teaches them to you, but you learn them through awkward encounters. That feeling of being constantly out of sync is exhausting. This was the real struggle. Not just the big paperwork problems, but the quiet, draining work of trying to understand the heart of a culture that was so much more complex than any movie ever showed. For months, my life in France felt like a battle. I was frustrated and often felt totally alone. There were days I seriously considered packing it all in. But then, slowly, things started to shift. The struggle didn't disappear, but it was punctuated by little moments of light, small victories that felt more satisfying than any of my old, idealized dreams. The biggest game changer? Language. Hands down. I finally admitted that my Duolingo streak wasn't cutting it and enrolled in a proper French course. It was the best decision I made. It wasn't just about grammar, it was about the shared experience. I was in a room full of other expats, all with our own stories of bureaucratic nightmares and cultural confusion. We were all in the same boat. We could laugh about our terrible attempts to navigate the system and practice our broken French on each other without feeling judged. It completely broke the isolation I'd been feeling. That's also where I learned that the state's integration programs were actually useful. The civic training classes, part of the integration contract, gave me the official user manual for the country, explaining everything from secularism to the social security system. My first real breakthrough happened at the local market. For weeks, I'd been the silent customer, just pointing at vegetables. But one Saturday, armed with a few new phrases, I went up to a cheese stall, took a deep breath, and managed to ask the vendor for a recommendation in clumsy but understandable French. Bonjour, monsieur. Je cherche un fromage de chèvre pas trop fort. Qu'est-ce que vous conseillez? The man, who I always thought seemed gruff, actually smiled. He didn't switch to English. He started explaining the different goat cheeses, where they came from, what to pair them with. I only understood about half of it, but I nodded along and bought the one he recommended. Walking away with my cheese, I felt this ridiculous, soaring sense of triumph. It wasn't about the cheese. It was about connection. I had crossed a barrier. These small victories started adding up. The day I successfully argued a phone bill entirely in French. The afternoon, I had a simple conversation with my elderly neighbor about the weather. The evening, I understood a joke on a French TV show. Each one was a tiny brick, slowly building a foundation of confidence. I started to understand the social rules better too. The French can seem private, and making deep friendships takes time. They have a clear line between acquaintances, connaissances, and real friends, amis. That initial coldness is often just formality, a layer that dissolves over time. I learned that joining clubs, a hiking group, a book club, was a great way to meet people based on shared interests, which is a much more natural way to build friendships. Even the bureaucracy started to make a weird kind of sense. I wouldn't say I learned to love it, but I learned how to handle it. The key is preparation. Always have extra copies of every document. Always be polite but persistent. I created a master folder on my computer with high-quality scans of everything, my administrative suit of armor. I wasn't just fighting against France anymore. I was learning to work with it. I was discovering my France, a place that existed far from the movie sets. The joy I found in this real France was infinitely deeper than the superficial happiness of the fantasy I arrived with. I was no longer just living in France, I was starting to build a life. After the climb, you reach a new plateau. It's not the fantasy I came with, it's something so much better. This is the new reality, the life you build brick by brick. It's a life filled with a quieter, more authentic kind of joy. The joy of living here isn't in the big cinematic moments. It's in the small, daily things. It's the bonjour from the baker who now recognizes you and saves you your favorite pastry. It's the simple pleasure of buying a perfect peach from the market and eating it on the walk home. It's taking a real 2-hour lunch break to just sit in a park and read a book, with zero guilt. That's the famous French art de vivre, the art of living. It's not a myth, you just have to slow down enough to earn it. There's a deep satisfaction that comes from mastering the system that once terrified you. Getting an official-looking letter and actually understanding it without a surge of panic is a huge win. These are the real milestones. The social life changes too. The initial effort gives way to a comfortable rhythm of drinks on a friend's balcony, long dinners, and weekend trips. You find your people, a mix of expats who get it, and French friends who give you a window into the country's soul. Of course, it's not perfect. Life here isn't a permanent vacation. The bureaucracy never really goes away. It just becomes a familiar monster. Taxes can be high, but that's the trade-off for great public services and healthcare. There are still days when my French gives out on me, when I feel like an outsider, but the trade-offs are worth it. The quality of life is real. It's in the access to incredible culture and history. It's in the focus on fresh, seasonal food. It's in the stunning landscapes, all just a train ride away. So, what should you expect if you move to France? Expect a challenge. Expect to be humbled. Expect to have your patience tested. Throw that movie script out of your head, but also expect to be rewarded. Expect to grow. The real beauty of France isn't in the postcard image, but in its authentic, complex, and deeply human reality. You won't find the easy life from the movies. You might just find something better, a real life that you built yourself in one of the most beautiful places on earth. My journey has been all about shedding expectations and embracing the messy, wonderful truth. And I hope by sharing the raw details, I've given you a more realistic map for the road ahead. The key takeaway is this: come for the dream, but stay for the reality. Be prepared to work for it. Learn the language, embrace the process, and don't let the frustrations overshadow the incredible rewards. I'm so curious to hear from you. For those already living in France or another country, what was your biggest reality check moment? What's one thing you wish you had known before you moved? Share your stories in the comments below. Your experience could be the one thing someone else needs to hear. If you found this video helpful and want more honest insights into expat life, please consider subscribing to the channel. It really helps support this community. Thank you so much for watching. Be brave, be patient, and maybe I'll see you at a market in France someday. Au revoir et à bientôt.